Howdy everybody, and welcome back to the Mega Man tutorial. So last time we added in the damage state to our player so that when he is hit by an enemy's attack, he can actually react to it. So how can we top that? Well, we are getting close to end game here, so we need to actually introduce the death state to the player. And a couple other miscellaneous objects that we'll try to fit in as well if we have time, so let's get cracking. Coming over to our player object, we want to add in the ability for the player to die. So we're actually going to throw in a death check over here into the step event right after the damage check. Reason why it's right after the damage check is because, well, if you go under or add 0 HP after taking damage, then instead of going into the damage state, you want to go into the death state, right? So we'll throw that into there. Death check into region. And it's fairly simple. We just check if our HP has gone below 0. And if we're not currently in the death state, then set our animation timer to sec times 0.25. And we create some more effects, which we'll add in. These are sphere objects that rotate around the player. And we set the ID to the player because these objects will rotate around the whatever object you actually is the around whatever object it's set as the ID. That way you can have it actually for multiple objects. In this case, we actually use it with the boss as well, I believe. Stop all audio and play the death sound and set our death state. Alright. We have these rotospheres, so we want to go down to our objects, go to our effects, create an object, obj_roto_sphere. Let's zoom in here. You'll note this is created at y-16. That way it appears at the center of our player rather than at the base of our player. And this one is not because we have to have two of them and they're in different positions. These are fairly simple. Set up our variables, and all that's left is a step event. The code for these objects actually comes from a good friend Yal, who creates a lot of great code and whatnot. So you can thank him on the GameMaker Discord for it. We set up a couple of variables here. You'll note that I don't really have like my underscores in front of them like I usually do. That's because I pretty much copied and pasted this from his code. So we have a bunch of variables that we set up. Then we have a central axis, which should be at our cx creator.x, cy creator.y -8. So this will be where we, the center point of where we actually rotate around. Set up a radius for our circle. So the point distance would be from the creator's X and Y position to our X and Y position, wherever we're at. The circumference is our radius times pi times 2. My current position in degrees on the circle. So we have point direction, be CX, CY, XY, so CX, CY from here to here to wherever we're at. point direction, yeah, that'd be in degrees. Where I should move to next. C next is equal to the, we have this velocity variable, which is how fast we want to rotate around. Our direction plus our velocity times 360 divided by our circumference. Final coordinates will be nx equals cx plus the length dir from where we're at to where we want to go. So our cx from the center point of the radius would be from there. Use length dir with our radius, and that's our length, and our next as our direction where we want to go to. And that tells us where we are supposed to be. Set up our h speed and v speed so that it moves us to that point. In x minus x, in y minus y. And destroy me once the animation is about to disappear. So if our animation timer is less than or equal to 0, then instance destroy. So if you remember back here, we set our animation timer to 0.25, so references our creator's animation timer, and once that reaches 0, disappears. We also need need to close all these things on this other side over here so I don't have to keep scrolling through all the code. We also need a death state. So go over here and other user event 9, create death state. And its death state is pretty much all animation, so pound region animation. We move our animation timer. Oh wait, if our animation timer has gotten down to -1, then turn manual sprite change to false. Otherwise, manual sprite change is true, because the death state, if I remember correctly, doesn't have a sprite. So when we're in the death state, there is no sprite. So when we're in the in this point, we're putting our sprite as the damage sprite at that point, I believe. I'll have to actually pull out the code here, but first put in our little animation timer move towards -1 that we use in a lot of our other states. Alright, so last but not least, all of our code. So if animation underscore timer underscore is equal to 0, not -0, just 0. So once our animation timer is up, we create some death spheres. So we set as create 4 of these as slows. Then we create 8 of these as fast. And I'm basically just copy and pasting the code here and increasing the increment of the sphere number as we go along, changing what direction they come out at: 45, 135, 225, 315. And we'll create the death sphere effect in a second here as well. The fast ones have a speed of 2 as well. And once we create the death spheres and all that fun stuff, then we actually decrement our lives. And if lives is greater than or equal to 0, so if we still have more lives, then restart is equal to create a room restart object. Restart timer is equal to sec times 3 because it takes 3 seconds after Mega Man dies before the room restarts. Then destroy the player object because it's no longer needed at that point. And same thing with if we have 0 lives or less than 0, so -1 or whatever, then we create a game over object, set previous stage equal to room. So we're going to use this global.previousstage variable. This variable was set up in your macro script, if you remember. And we use this to remember what room we were boss we were previously fighting. So if the player chooses to continue, he'll start again in this room. And of course, restart timer times 3 and instance destroy. Alright, so we got a lot of different death spheres and stuff here to go and create. Oh, back to the rotosphere. We should probably actually give it a sprite, right? Effects. Sprite death sphere. Yes. And also on the death sphere, so create a new effect object. And this one will be even simpler. There we go. So make sure you remember to destroy the sphere once it goes outside of the room, because these guys go flying off the screen. And of course, effects, give it a death sphere. All right. Just checking on all this code over here. Okay, we need the room restart and the game over object as well. So, what time are we at? We're at 12 minutes. All right, good. We got plenty of time. So, we're going to throw these into the room objects setup. So, create our objects. Restart and create object. obj underscore game underscore over. Pop movement over here. So room restart. Now that we've created that, give it a create event. It has a timer and a step event. It's a fairly simple code. If timer underscore is equal to 0, then so just our approach code right there for bringing our timer down to -1. A lot of stuff we set up previously starts coming into play here. Alright, so back to our object stats real quick. So remember we set up our event user 0 to reset our HP and our ammo. And with stage start we set up this 0 to set our cameras X and Y to cam X, cam Y. And if you remember, this is a persistent object, so the reason why it's persistent is because we're going to put in some checkpoints, and when you hit the checkpoints, it moves the start object around in the room. So by keeping it persistent, it'll keep its X and Y position. So we set the cams X and Y to the room that the Go object is currently in. Set the cam mode to free, which then gets set to cam mode. Well, we put it to free, that way the camera can move, but it gets set to follow as soon as the player is created. And then we start up the Woodman stage a song to start it up again. This would obviously be different depending on what room you're actually in, and so on and so forth. If you're doing a lot of different rooms, you'd probably make it a stage start Woodman, stage start whatever, or you could just use some sort of switch structure to identify what room you're in and change what value, what song you're supposed to play depending on what room you're in, and so on. That'd be another option as well. So now we got all that going there. It's in the room restart object. All seems to be going good. So let's close all these. And let's do the game over object. Again, it's going to be a lot like our room restart, except instead of restarting the room, we restart the room, but we clear all of the various settings and stuff that need to be cleared for a continue. So if our timer is equal to 0, then set our stage start timer equal to 0, and set our HP equal to the maximum again. We could have done this by executing the event 0 there. But I didn't do that there. Set our lives to 2. That'll be important. And go to the game over room. Remember, we set the stage start timer equal to 0. That way it doesn't teleport in Mega Man, I believe. Equal to 0. Actually, I have no idea why I set the timer to 0 there. I would presume that actually if we go to the game over room and this guy still exists, then it would be teleporting in Mega Man into the game over room. So we probably don't want that to be happening. So if we just real quick set in and check if room is equal to room man stage, then teleport in Mega Man. There we go. That'll prevent that from doing anything weird. Then we have this game over room here. Let me pop it open over on the other side over here. We have 2 game over room objects that we use in the game over room. They are pretty much carbon copies of all of our other menu selection objects, like the password select screen object, or the mode select object right over here. So we could actually probably even just to make a copy of that, and it'll work for the most part. But let's pop open over here in room objects, create object underscore game over underscore room 1. For some reason I have 2 of these objects. Give it a step and give it a draw. And as a sprite, give it the 9 slice sprite with height top left and left start, because oh yeah, that's right, there's 2 boxes and they sort of slide in back and forth depending on your selection. That's why there's 2 of these objects. So we have text game over, and this is the first one, and then it slides over, and then it gives you the option to select something. So selection, so on and so forth, text timer 0.25, and start up the music. Come over to the draw, just the normal draw, 9 slice, set up our text and our font, make sure it's the right font. Set up text alpha as the text alpha so it fades in properly. Then we draw a text from our left and our top plus 16, game over text, and draw set alpha equal to 1. So revert that back to 1. Alright. Real quick, last but not least. If audio get sound tracks position of our song is greater than 2, so if we're greater than 2 seconds into the song, then start fading out our text. And once the text alpha is gone, is 0, then we move us off the left of the screen, so we have a speed of 4. Our left variable is approached to our object camera.viewWidth. Our left start minus object camera.viewWidth. So we're basically moving 1 screen to the left. Underscore speed. And object game over room.2. So we'll want to create the object so we can reference it properly. Dot left is equal to approach object game over room 2 dot left to 63 by speed. So basically we're moving this off 1 screen width to the left and the second room object over into its proper position by the same speed. So they'll both finish moving around the same time. And if my left is equal to the position that we're supposed to be at, so if we've finally arrived at our destination, then start ticking down our timer. And once we are at 0, change the music to mode select and destroy this object, because we don't need it to be trying to continually move the objects over to the left once it's already completed its purpose. So let's pop open U. And as you can see, actually, we didn't even use any of this stuff really here. It's mostly just for the second object here, where we'll be using pretty much the same code again. So come on over to our second object. Width, height, top, and left. So we set it to 63 plus the, so we set it at our desired position plus the view width, so it's a screen over to the right. And our options are continue, stage selection, and password. And then the rest of those are the same. Step and draw. The drawing is slightly more complex on this guy because we're actually going to be drawing selection text at this point. So we draw our 9 slice background and we set our text alpha because we're going to be fading in this text again as well. Caret if left is equal to 63, so we don't allow you to actually, we don't draw the caret or anything until we actually are in position. If left is equal to 63, then whenever our interval speed by interval timer and draw caret. So once draw caret is true, well, it already is true, so I probably don't even need this at all. I could just get rid of that, I guess. Oh, wait. We want that there because if we make a selection, we turn draw caret to false until the until we fade off of the screen. Draw sprite caret, add 0, left plus 8, top plus 16, selection times 16. And our options for the length of our options array, draw it at I times 16 on the options, and then reset our draw alpha at that point. All right, let's get the step in here. So once our left is at 63, so once we've reached the position that we want to be at, then we go and start increasing our alpha because and we don't really bother with capping this because, as you remember, once we get to 1, any value over 1 is treated basically as 1 by when you set the alpha. Else exit, so we prevent the execution of any step code when we haven't reached our left position yet. If draw caret is true, then up and down, use our little selection bit or interval timer, our sound bit, play sound txt, sound caret, etc., etc. That's all just copy and pasted. Interval timer, copy and pasted from our menu selection and whatnot. Let's go again. Once start pressed, if our selection is 0, then we set draw caret to false, stop all stuff, and then go back to our previous stage. So 0 is continue. If it is 1, then we go back to the room stage select. And if it's 2, well, we don't set that up because we haven't set up a password system for this setup. And we should probably also remember to destroy obj stage start at this point as well. So instance underscore destroy, because we don't need him following us around. Alright, all that's in there. How much time do we got left? We're at 28 minutes now, so next episode we'll throw in a few miscellaneous objects such as the desirable, there is a, what is it called? All of a sudden, name got on my name. Checkpoint, that's the word I was looking for. A checkpoint so we can save our progress as we go through the stage, and the famous door effect. So you hit the door, you transition over to the next room, and then we'll get into setting up the boss finally. Alright, so thank you everybody for joining. I think it's time for me to read some Patreon names. I'd like to thank Fragile Hearts, through Patreon, Damien, Kenneth Klein, John Dickey, and Vladimir Soldatov for your support of the NES GameMaker. You make the lights in this background light up. Thank you, everybody, for your support, or for watching, even if it's not monetary. Having the views and just knowing that somebody out there is benefiting from my work is greatly benefiting to me psychologically as well. So thank you, everybody, and remember, if you have a comment or question, leave it behind in the bottom. Otherwise, till next time, good luck with your programming.